In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this bath tray for my wife for Christmas. She's pregnant right now, and lately in this pregnancy, she's been really enjoying baths, so I figured this would be a nice gift for her. The wood that I'm using is actually cedar planks that are meant for fences. I'm using painter's tape right now because this wood is a little bit on the frail side and it was chipping out with my circular saw. So I put painter's tape over it to eliminate that problem. Our tub is 31 inches wide and each plank is a half of an inch thick. And I want an edge at each end, so I need to make this cut at 30 inches. And this is the painter's tape trick again. And after I get it on there, I need to measure again at 30 inches. Here I am clamping the piece down to my workbench, and then I'm using my speed square with my circular saw to get a nice square cut. I make this cut twice because I'm going to actually glue two of them side by side together. After that is completed, what I like to do is look at each piece side by side and look at the wood grain pattern to see which would look the best. And once I figure out which one looks best, I glue both of them together. And I put a thin bead of glue on each one and then even out that glue to make sure that every part is covered. And then the clamping process begins. As you're gluing the pieces together, you want to make sure that the pieces are level at the seam, because if a piece rises a little bit at the seam, then there's going to be a lot of sanding to fix that problem after the glue is dried. So a little more work now can eliminate a lot of work later. While the glue is drying for the base piece, I actually wanted to make rails on all four sides of the tray. So I'm making a cut at 1.5 inches, and these will become the sides. After I make that cut, the glue is dried, so I start sanding the glue off of my seam. After that's all sanded, I get out my miter saw to cut the side rails. Here I am just test fitting them to make sure that they fit. And now to attach the sides to the base, I'm actually drilling pilot holes because the pieces of wood are so thin, I didn't want the nails to crack them, and so that's why I'm drilling pilot holes. Now that the pilot holes are all drilled, I'm going to put some glue on the base, spread it evenly across the piece, and then I'm going to attach the rails to the side of the base. These plastic sheets that I'm putting under the base right now were actually given to me by a friend, and they really help with the glue up process because I know that once the glue is dry, the wood is not going to stick to the plastic. And here I am hammering nails into the pilot holes that I had already created. Then just repeat this process for the other side. And after they're glued together, I like to take a screwdriver to clean up the excess glue so that I don't have to sand it out later. And here we are attaching the other side rails to the base. But this time, as I'm making my pilot holes, I'm actually going to make a pilot hole into the other rail instead of the base. That way I can make a tighter joint at each end. And this process is now just going to be the same as the other side rails that we did, so we can move along to the next part. which is filling in the holes with putty. Now that the glue is all dry, we're going to wrap a sheet of sandpaper around a square piece of wood. That way we know we're getting right down into the corner and sanding out all the glue spots. Once those corners are done, we're actually going to sand over the entire workpiece. And what I'm specifically working on here is called softening the corners, which is lightly passing over each edge of the workpiece. That way it doesn't feel so harsh on your fingers, but it actually feels soft. For the finish on this workpiece, I'm actually using polyurethane. And the polyurethane was actually soaking into the wood pretty quick, and so I had to put a very liberal amount of it on there. Once this coat was dry, I went over it with 500 grit sandpaper just to smooth it out. And then I ended up going over it with 4 different coats of polyurethane, each time sanding in between with 500 grit sandpaper. And on the last one, I actually used printer paper just to try to make the last finish a little bit more glossy. Once the finish was all done, I put some sticky feet on the bottom side. And here's the finished product, a bathtub tray that my wife can enjoy. It's fun knowing that this wood was originally intended to become a fence, but after a little bit of manipulation, it turned into something a little bit more fun for my wife. Thanks for watching us here at the Kimball DIY Home, and please subscribe for later videos. Thanks.